Live from the Mecca of Mormonism, Salt Lake City, Utah. This is Heart of the Matter, where we're learning together how to live as Christians in the age of fulfillment. I'm your host, Shawn McCraney. I'm going to venture out on a limb tonight. It's a limb of supposition because I am not a psychologist and I have nothing but scriptural insights into what I'm about to say and share. In the story of Samson and Delilah, Samson is being pressured by Delilah to reveal the secret of his power. His secret power, and he has lied to her a couple times, which, you know, when you do that to a woman, usually that makes them very angry, which she was, and persistent to know, you've lied to me, now tell me the truth. At one point we read in the story in Judges 16:16, and it came to pass when she pressed him daily with her words and urged him, so that his soul was vexed unto death. Here's the strongest guy in the world, right? He's killed thousands with the jawbone of an ass. He has wiped out soldiers. He's killed a lion with his own bare hands. And his soul wanted to die. And what did it want to die because of? Her words. Her words that were pressed upon him daily. Moving out to the New Testament, Jesus said to his apostles, "It is the Spirit that makes alive, the flesh profits nothing. The words that I speak unto you, they are spirit and they are life." So on the one hand, we have words that are spoken to Samson, and he wants to die. And then we have words that Jesus says he gives, and they cause people to live. From these passages, and the first one's sort of ambiguous a little bit, and the second one more direct and didactic, we might assume the notion that our words have the capacity to give life or to bring death. Now, in James chapter 3, this is an essential reading when it comes to the mouth, the human tongue, the words we speak. And because it's essential, Wendy's made a graphic for all of it, and I'm going to read it. It says, "For in many things we offend all. If any man offends not in word, the same is a perfect man, complete man or woman, and able also to bridle their whole body." You control the mouth, you can control your whole body, he says. "Behold, we put bits into horses' mouths that they obey us, and we turn about their whole body." A little giant horse, you know, however much they weigh, you take a bit and you put it in your mouth. And just with that, you can turn that horse. He says, "Behold also the ships, that though they be great and are driven by fierce winds, yet they are turned about by a very small helm, whither the governor listeth." There's a little paddle on the back, and it goes like this, and the boat turns, right? He says, "Even so the tongue is a little member." Bah, it's little relative to the size of the rest of us. "And boasts great things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire kindleth. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. So is the tongue among our members, that it defiles the whole body, and sets on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire of hell. For every kind of beasts and birds and of serpents and of things in the sea is tamed, and has been tamed of mankind. But the tongue can no man tame. It is an unruly evil full of deadly poison. But the tongue can no man tame," is what he says. "Therewith," meaning with the tongue, "bless we God, even the Father, and therewith we curse men which are made after the similitude of God." He's bringing out our hypocritical nature, that we will speak with this tongue evil, and then with the same tongue we'll speak good to God. And he's pointing out how hypocritical that is. "Out of the same mouth proceeds blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not so to be. Does a fountain send forth sweet water and bitter? Can a fig tree, my brethren, bear olive berries, either a vine figs? So can no fountain yield both salt water and fresh. Who is a wise man or woman and endued with the knowledge among you? Let him show out of a good conversation his works with meekness of wisdom. But if you have bitter envying and strife in your hearts, glory not and lie not against the truth. This wisdom descends not from above, what he's talking about, but is earthly, sensual, and devilish. For where envying and strife is, there is confusion and every evil work. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure and peaceable, gentle, easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality, without hypocrisy. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in the peace of them that make peace. That's a lot of verses, but pretty phenomenal passages about the tongue and the human power behind it. From these passages and more, we see that our mouths and the words we speak, and I would add the words we write in this day and age, because we're always tempted to write words with our technology, we have the capacity to give life or to bring death. And I think it's something we don't often think about because, it is kind of ponderous and it's kind of, wow, really? It's so fun to kind of use our mouths badly toward others. John the Beloved said this in 1 John 3:15. Ready? Whosoever hates his brother is a murderer. That's what he said. And you know that no murderer has eternal life abiding in him. It's really interesting that John says if you hate, you're a murderer. That's what he says. Now, of course, our laws in the land, we don't take somebody and put them in prison because they hate somebody. We can, I guess, charge them with hate speech in this day and age, but hate in and of itself inside a person is not punishable by law. But John says here, if you hate, you're a murderer. Why does he make that connection between hate and murder? Jesus says in Matthew 5:22, whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause is in danger of judgment. So we have hate being likened to murder, and we have anger being equated with judgment from God. So we have feelings and emotions that we have being equated with actual things that will occur. We have hate being associated with the act of murder. It's fascinating. They're feelings, right? Hate and anger, but Jesus and John associate them both, hate and anger, with murder and judgment. Because most of us are not actually willing to physically murder somebody. Walking around physically, and put an end to somebody who troubles us or who we don't like or has hurt us or something. I suggest that we often carry out our assassinations of them through the words that we speak and the words that we write. And to get to the heart of the matter, let me paradoxically say we need to step way back and we need to look really closely at ourselves on this subject. And because I think what we're going to say might enable you, it's enabled me better, to be cognizant of the words I am using toward other people. When you look at a piece of art, or you look at a landscape, let's say, you're driving in the car and you see a landscape, the thing in and of itself has no intrinsic meaning. It doesn't say to you, the piece of art, I want you to think this or feel this or respond this way. What does a bunch of crooked, dark branches against a black, cloudy sky really mean? It means there's wood that's twisted and there is a dark sky that probably contains moisture. That's what the intrinsic meaning behind that vision that we see of a landscape. But when we see a old tree with crooked black limbs against a black threatening sky, we impute meaning to that. That's scary. I have 2 grandsons and they see things like that and they say, that's scary, right? Because we take what's in us and we assign it to what we're seeing, and we give that thing, piece of art, landscape, meaning. Well, it's the same thing that we do when we're introduced to people, or people that we are even acquainted with, other people. Usually, we are the ones imputing our personal assessment of them by what we see. They aren't necessarily conveying much in terms of real definition of themselves by what you see. If someone has long hair and a beard, you could say they're a scumbag, they're a biker, they're a criminal, but they may be the opposite of that, right? Or if somebody's clean shaven and well dressed, you might think they're upstanding, and they could be the opposite of that. They themselves, what we see in them, we put to them, right? So because nature abhors a vacuum, as Spinoza says, we look at something and we have to, it's human nature. In fact, the Psalm says that we judge by the appearance of things. We look and we judge and we make assessments. And it's natural for us to do that because to live in a vacuum is a nightmare. So you have to sort of categorize things, and that's normal. And sometimes we're right. Psychologically, however, in and through our minds and hearts, we define people. We stack them up constantly. And once we have sufficiently defined them as bad, we use words to try to destroy them. That's how it works. We define in our minds, we impute meaning to their existence, and then we use words to try to assassinate them and remove them from our lives. Because these words are usually lacking in information and therefore are unjust, Jesus made the comment, let your communications be yea, yea, and nay, nay, because anything else is evil. Let it be yes and no. He said anything else is evil. Of course, we don't take that literally, but the point is be careful, because the words have an ability to kill or to give life. It seems to me that when we perceive others, strangers, those we barely know, and even those we know fairly well, we all choose. I think we choose, even though, and the reason I'm bringing this up tonight is because I don't think we think of it as a choice. But in reality, we are choosing whether to give them life or deliver to them death. We choose to do it. And if you think about it, you can see that you choose to do it. Because if you make the choice to stop doing it, that means that you also make the choice to do it. You just have to be more conscious of it in your life, right? So I can't speak to why we perceive certain people the way we do. They have done facial recognition studies and said that when you're a baby, you could have come into a grocery store with your mother, and when she had her back turned, a mean old man could have looked at you funny, and that facial recognition carries with you the rest of your life. And whenever you see somebody who has a face like that, you don't like them. I mean, it's that deep in terms of how and why we perceive things a certain way. But in the face of all these unknown circumstantial, environmental, and maybe even genetic factors that we bear with ourselves through this world, I want to talk about the words we choose to say and write. And I want to talk primarily, or at least at the beginning, about mean words, unkind words, cutting words, which I am more than guilty of spouting over the course of my life, and even as recently as probably 8 minutes ago when I think about it. So, but from what I can determine, again, I'm not a psychologist, but I think we say and we write unkind things about people for one or more of several general reasons. I can think of 4 specifically. The first is revenge. That person has hurt us somehow, and we're getting back at them, okay? The second is envy, and that means they possess something that we will never have, we can't have. And we aren't jealous of them, we're envious of them. There's a difference. Jealousy is when you own something and someone's trying to take it. Envy is when someone else has something and you don't want them to have it. So envy is another reason why we speak the words we do that are unkind. Fear is another one. They represent something that scares us, that we can't figure out. We don't want to be like that. We don't want it in our family or in our lives. And because it scares us, we say mean and unkind words. And finally, I think there are people who speak unkind words out of power, out of ego. They look at others and think, I am in a God position and I can say mean things about them because they're lesser than me. We do it out of ego. They deserve these words because they're not as significant in this world as I am. So someone has hurt us, we say words to get back at them. Someone has something we'll never possess, we're envious of them, and we malign their character or their person with words. Someone scares us and we don't understand what to do with it, so we use unkind words. And or we view someone as inferior to us in skill set, in abilities, in appearance, and we step in, we play God, and we think we can criticize them unkindly and condemn them unkindly. Those are the four things that I could think of as to the main categories that drive us to say unkind things about other people. Revenge, envy, fear, and power. We notice that in every case, we're personally involved with why we say the words. We are engaged with that thing or person, and we are involved with that relationship of what we say. And in every case, we are striving to do something with our words toward revenge, envy, revenge, envy, what? Fear and power. I'm losing it. What are we trying to do? Whether it's for revenge, envy, fear, or power, we are trying to murder them. We're trying to kill them. See, like I said, most of us can't take a knife out or a gun and shoot and kill somebody because we know God doesn't want us to do that. We know it's against the law, and there's something really reprehensible about that most of us say, I can't do it. Sociopaths, they'll kill you for looking at them cross-eyed, right? So, but we're doing the same thing. It comes from the same source in our heart. When we speak words that are meant to hurt them, all we're doing is we're killing them slowly, one little cut at a time. The difference is the administration of the execution, right? So the intent of mean words to hurt people who have hurt us is obvious. Hurt them back, right? And hurt is the beginning, ouch, of death. It's the infliction of pain upon somebody else. So the words are little packages of death is how I put it, a small dose. But doesn't God say revenge is his? Revenge is mine, saith the Lord. So any Christian who's trying to understand how to walk with God would have to understand that if revenge is his, that our response to hurtful words cannot be revenge, or hurtful actions cannot be revenge. It has to be good for evil. It has to be kind words, life-giving words when we have received death, either physical or verbal. It's tough to accept, but that is what Scripture talks about. Jesus talks about it quite a bit. Think about this act of murder relative to envy and fear and exercising power over those we believe are inferior to us, thereby granting us the right to criticize them. There's a handsome man or woman, and we feel threatened by them due to envy. So we are mean to him or her through our words. And indirectly, that meanness, that unkindness, is an attempt for us to get them to feel badly about themselves. We want them to feel pain about themselves. And probably psychologically, I don't know this, and this is probably blown smoke, but probably our hope is that enough people in the world will deliver those things to them so that ultimately they'll die and disappear from our existence so we don't have to deal with the pain we feel in their presence because we envy them. And we want them to die from these unkind words through cancer or suicide or something like that. And of course, when someone kills himself because we've been unkind to them, the first thing we say is, well, I didn't want them to kill themselves. But in reality, I think we do. And that's why I think with God, he knows all this stuff. And there's no messing around. He knows the heart. And so when people will put off that they're good, when you start to look at the human nature this way, everyone's condemned. We are all guilty. And God will look at that. This is not to break you, these words. These words are being delivered so you can say, Jesus, help me. Help me to overcome myself and not hide under a cloak of I'm doing good. Because in reality, I think this thing is helping dredge up the filth that's in the basement of our heart. And when you do that, it's not fun, but boy, you can start to see things more clearly. And then you can start acting better. And when you do that, that helps you in your relationship with him. So we encounter someone who frightens us, of course, and they're challenging our ways when someone frightens us, you know, and they're dirty or they're unattractive or they're radicals, and they challenge our lifestyle, they challenge our religious views, they challenge our worldviews, our politics. And so what we do is get online or to others or maybe to them, and we assassinate them with our words. It's all subtle but murderous ways to eliminate them. They're threats. We do it individually. We do it politically. We do it religiously. We do it racially. We do it culturally. We do it when we're threatened. We do it when we are getting revenge. We do it when we're fearing. We're doing it when we're envious. And we do it when we think that we're better than others. Simultaneously, in and through their deaths, and this is important, in and through the hope for death that I think we subconsciously long for, the people who we are killing or who die become a moral tale for us. They become a lesson in morality. See, what you say is, and you can bring this into the religious realm, I speak out against, Mormonism is great at this. Let me just talk about it this way. Mormonism teaches its members, if you leave the Mormon church, your life is going to fall apart. You're going to lose your family, and it's hotter than hell in here, speaking of words, and you're going to lose your family, you're going to lose your kids, you're going to become an alcoholic, and you'll die, okay? And this is evidenced in the Mormon temple where Satan actually says to the people, if you don't live up to every word, every covenant you've made in the temple this day, you will be in my power, okay? So people go through the temple, Satan in a film tells them that. They've made all these covenants with signs and tokens, and then he tells them, and if you don't keep every one of these, which are impossible to keep, by the way, he says, you will be in my power. And so in the culture of Mormonism, the idea is if they leave the Mormon church, they're in Satan's power. And so that pervades the adult world of Mormonism. And so what happens is somebody is a Mormon and they leave the church. What happens is the people who were once their friend and called him brother or sister deliver unkind words about them to each other and maybe even to them. You've fallen under the spell of Satan. You have failed. You have done this, right? And the person actually feels those darts of death, and they've lost their friends. Maybe they've lost their family. And because they've left the church, because the family's told to stay with the church and leave the spouse who goes, and so they do start drinking. And they do become an alcoholic, and maybe perhaps someone does kill themselves. And then what happens is they become a warning. They become a story for the rest of the church. You know, McCraney, don't leave the church. Did you see what happened to him? The dude covered himself in tattoos and his family's all nuts now. Man, don't do it. You become a moral object lesson to the rest of the world. And that's the the driving force behind all of it is these mean words. They're meant to kill. And when they kill, we use what we kill as an object lesson to teach the rest of the community, don't be like him. Every time I speak against Calvinism or the Trinity or eternal punishment or futurism, Calvinists or Trinitarians, often one and the same, lovers of hell, futurism, they deliver packets of words personalized against me. The reason they do this, whether they know it or not, is they want me to die because I'm confronting them with things that they hold sacred and dear. And if I'm doing this and they hear that, it makes them angry and they seek revenge, or they're envious, or they're fearful, or they think they're smarter or better at everything than I am and they have the right to criticize me, and they deliver the words of death to me. And the overall hope is that I will die if I get enough of those aimed at my way. And then if I did die, they would use me as a moral tale and say, see, McCraney went off the deep end. He started talking about things, that the brethren have never agreed with. You don't do that. And behind all this is this idea of words giving life or words bringing death. Within the realms of Christianity, every unkindness, every mean word, and I'm not speaking from the pulpit here. I'm speaking from experience. Every slander we make, consciously and perhaps even subconsciously, is an attempt to commit murder. Challenge it, test it, read scripture, think about it. I believe that. It's just in a much lesser form. But because we're civilized and afraid that God will punish us, we just do it in a lesser form. And what I'm trying to say is played out in the life of Jesus clearly, if you think about it. His ministry was to the lowly. The powers that be feared that. They did not want the rabble coming up into power. And so they feared it. And they used words against him. It was filled with miracles, and initially it was filled with popularity, which was terrifying to the powers that be. His ministry was truth. They hated him for that. His ministry was confronting the established order. They were angry at him for that. And they saw him as an illiterate Galilean who had no training as a rabbi. When they were erudites and they lived in the ivory tower of higher learning, and they thought, who are you? You were born of ill repute. Your mother had a suspicious pregnancy. You're from Galilee, and you think you're going to do this? So they thought they had the power to criticize him and control him too. And what happened was it started with words, and then those words ultimately led to what? Killing him. Killing him. They were just a precursor. And that's why he told them, you guys are murderers. They said, he said, you guys are trying to kill me. No one had tried to kill him yet. And they said, who's trying to kill you? He says, you're trying to kill me. Because he knew. The words flew like our words fly, like my words have flown. Conversely, we have a choice then, and a minute-to-minute opportunity to refuse our natural Cro-Magnon man, Cro-Magnon women, if there's such a thing, to kill and instead to give life. You have that option. And to give life is incomprehensibly powerful and rewarding. But you have to try it. And it takes a death to yourself. You're dying in your flesh every time you do it. But when you choose to uplift somebody who deserves your revenge, who you envy, who you fear, or who you feel superior to, you're lighting something in them and you're giving them hope. Imagine somebody who is really picked on, right? And you'll imagine those packages coming at them all the time. They're always picked on. And So they're weighted down with these thousands of packages on their back. That's what they get all day long from everybody, because they're not easy to love, and they're difficult, or they do dumb things, or they've hurt us, and they just are. But you choose to upset the balance of that by giving them light, by saying something kind to them, by encouraging them, and their load gets lighter, and the weight of the death starts to fall away. And the more people who will do that to that individual, give him or her more and more light. And that's what we're supposed to do as Christians, as followers of Christ, is to give and bring light and love and life to people, the 3 L's. So condemnations and harsh criticisms are death. The Word of God himself is light and love and life. So we choose every time we meet somebody how we're going to respond to them. And I just want you to think about that. I've been thinking about it a lot this past 2 weeks, talking about it with my daughter, and just the concepts are out there. And I think they're important, because another important thing happens to us when we do that. You start to change. Now, I'm not talking about there's a word of knowledge or a word, I don't know what they call it in evangelicalism. I'm not talking about any hocus pocus. I'm not talking about the law of attraction. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about what Scripture says. And the reality is that when you choose to deliver life, you start living too. It's a fascinating thing that happens. And then you start to let go of stuff that burdens you and keeps you in a state of unrest and unpeace. I think that this message has import today, but it's not readily seen or known. But Jesus did say that every idle word that men speak, they will give account of in the day of judgment. And sobering as that is, I think that's a reality for believers. Maybe not babes and people who are learning and all that. But when you become a mature believer, I think a son and daughter will learn to speak words of life and to avoid those words of death. Comment below and tune in tomorrow night here on Heart of the Matter.